Hey everyone, what's going on? This is Justin. This is my first recording for some NFL DFS picks. I thought it would just be fun to give this a try, try and give you guys some advice and kind of some of the players that I'm looking at for week 4 and, just have some fun with it. I think hopefully it'll help me in my process just kind of talking through some of these people and then hopefully I can provide some picks that you guys might be useful for you guys, or I just want to try and keep it as educational as possible and make sure I'm not just giving you picks and just kind of explaining what I'm looking at and kind of my thought process with my DFS picks on a weekly basis. So first video, so bear with me. We'll get better, and if I get some views, I'll try and make sure that I keep adding and just kind of keep things going. So first of all, I'm mainly a DraftKings player. Typically, I play mm, probably about $1,000 a week. About 80% of my bankroll goes to cash games, which are 50-50s and double ups, mainly a few triple ups, and then mostly head to heads. And then I allocate the other 20% to GPPs, which are guaranteed prize pools. These are the ones that are probably get the most attention. They're kind of, first place, big prizes, $10,000. Millionaire maker, you can make $1,000 or $1,000,000. So it just kind of depends. But typically on a week to week basis, I'm about 80% to 20%. But for this show today, I'll probably just kind of run through some of the guys that I really like. For cash games, maybe a few good GPP options. But honestly, I'm just going to kind of go position by position, point out some guys I like, why I like them, kind of give you some research behind it. But with that being said, let's get started here. So here I'm just have the lineups pulled up. So let's start at the top. Pat Mahomes. We all know he's really good. Puts up big numbers every week. You can play him every week. There's all this hype around him, his college stats playing in a dome. So just know that he's really good. I'm not sure if he's cash game viable. Typically with quarterbacks, you want to try and pay down a little bit because the range of outcomes for quarterbacks typically isn't. Uh, it's usually the results are usually pretty condensed, so we want to try and spend down at quarterback and try and spend up a little bit more on the running backs, wide receivers, and some of the other position players. So Pat Mahomes, great player, probably a tournament GPP play only. Same thing with Lamar Jackson. He's in a good spot. Cleveland's down a couple cornerbacks, so keep an eye on the injury report for them. But as of this recording, it sounds like they're not going to be playing. So Lamar Jackson, Hollywood Brown, Mark Andrews, all a solid play. Lamar Jackson, once again, really good. Probably not a cash game player for me though. Tom Brady at Buffalo, not a great spot. I'm not even sure I would go there in tournaments. Probably an avoid. Deshaun Watson at home. Carolina's got some injuries that they're dealing with in the secondary. Deshaun Watson is a stud. I mean, we've seen it already. Coming into the year, I had him pegged as QB1. Obviously Mahomes is, just an otherworld talent. So maybe not Watson, not QB1 anymore, obviously, but in a great spot. Carolina has done a pretty good job to this point of holding opponents and quarterbacks, but he's in play. Great supporting cast. He's always in play. Jared Goff, another good spot. Tampa Bay, is a pass funnel defense. They basically all that means is that they're very good at stopping the run, so it kind of funnels opponents to throw against them a lot. So Jared Goff in a great spot. Cooper Kupp, another guy I really like, but I'll get to him. Philip Rivers against Miami. San Diego down some wide receivers. Kind of a condensed target share to Keenan Allen, and probably not enough upside for me, but solid play. Russell Wilson, I think he's probably going to be. It's going to be him and then one other player that I'll get to that will probably be the two cash game quarterbacks that you have to choose from, and most other players will. So, I mean, Russell Wilson, obviously he's put up some big numbers recently. There were some worries coming into the season that Seattle really liked to run the ball a lot, which was true. And last year they were very established to run. Brian Schottenheimer, their OC, and Pete Carroll really liked to run the ball a lot. So I think there was a lot of worry coming into the season. But he has thus far, granted, the game scripts have kind of gone or forced them to lean on the pass a little bit. I think he's a solid play. I think it, like I said, it's going to come down to him and one other guy that I'll mention. As of right now, I'd probably lean Russell Wilson only because Arizona, not a good defense. They play up tempo, which means more plays for the opposing team. I think Russell Wilson's in a great spot. Coming down the list a little bit, Kyler Murray, always going to be in play. Matt Ryan, no one ever seems to want to play him, but Tennessee, a solid spot, but not a guy I'm looking at. Baker Mayfield, same thing. Jameis Winston, nah. Chris Godwin being banged up. Rams defense being solid. I wouldn't look at him. Just don't get too cute. Josh Allen, not a good spot. New England hasn't allowed a passing TD all year. Granted, they haven't played much, but aren't many good opponents. But their defense looks solid so far. So it's kind of a wait and see. Matt Stafford's in an interesting situation, especially if Pat Mahomes does what he normally does. I think Stafford's in a good spot. I don't think he's done much the last couple of weeks, but against Arizona in Week 1, as you can see, he lit them up. So there is some upside there. Just depends on if Matt Patricia and Darrell Bevel actually want to throw the ball. But they might be forced to in this one. Cam Newton, no. Brissett, no. Derek Carr, no. So here's the other guy that you would probably want to consider for cash games is Daniel Jones here. So obviously he made his debut last week against a pretty bad pass defense in Tampa Bay, but he lit him up. 39 points. Had rushed for a couple touchdowns. Only rushed 4 times though, so I guess we're coming out of college. He did have some running ability, but I think we're kind of still in a wait and see on how much he runs in the NFL. But if he has a floor, just meaning if at minimum we're gonna get 4 or 5 rushes a game from him, that kind of provides a stable floor. When you're looking at quarterbacks, I really love quarterbacks who run, obviously, because if they run for 40 yards in a game, that's basically an additional touchdown. So it just automatically raises their floor. So I think Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones, solid player, and definitely a cash game consideration. So him and Wilson would be the 2 quarterbacks that I would consider. So for now, we'll just go ahead and we'll plug in Russell Wilson. So coming over to running backs. So typically with running backs, you want guys who are going to get you a lot of touches. Running backs really are kind of the staple to fantasy football, and even more so on a website like DraftKings, where you have some of these pass catching running backs. We're really going to put an emphasis. So don't overthink this one. Just plug in Christian McCaffrey. If you're not playing Christian McCaffrey in cash games, probably not going to win this week. Not a smart decision. So just plug in Christian McCaffrey. He's really good. Houston's giving up a lot of yards. Just put in Christian McCaffrey. So coming down the list a little bit more, Barkley out. Dalvin Cook, tough matchup. Good player, obviously, so far, but not a cash game play this week. Austin Eckler's interesting. Probably the last week that you'll see him as the bell cow. I know Justin Jackson's out with a calf injury, but now we have Eckler coming into this. He's a solid player. He's had, so far his low week has been 15. The game script for this game is projected for the Chargers to be ahead. We kind of saw it with the Zeke last week. I'm not sure that if San Diego gets up big, they're going to ride Eckler into the ground. I know they have Travarius Pope, who I saw right currently. So I'm not sure what the ceiling is on Eckler, but I think he's going to eat. And even though they're probably going to get up on Miami pretty quick, I think Eckler's going to get his points. If he scores a touchdown, catches 4 or 5 passes, he's looking at 20 plus points. And that kind of floor, I think, is extremely valuable. So for now, I'll plug in Eckler as well, kind of a team jam 'em in week. For those of you who don't know, Team Jam 'em in was a couple years ago when we had David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell. They were getting 30 touches a week, and they were just lighting it up. So despite the fact that they cost, a decent amount, we were just jamming them in every week because they had such a high floor, and then we would just kind of build around them. So kind of the same model this week. We'll go to Eckler. Depending on how much salary we have left over, maybe I will make some adjustments. So top for wide receivers here, there's a lot of interesting options. I'm probably not playing any of these top end guys in cash just because I'm putting more of an emphasis on running backs. And like I mentioned, typically on most weeks, you're gonna want to spend up on running back compared to wide receiver, unless there's some great values. But um, I think for now, um, this is how I'm kind of leaning with running backs up here. And typically, also, I like to play 3 running backs, so two in the running back slots, and then 1 in the flex. So once we get down to the flex, we'll kind of see what we have left. But typically, you want to aim for 3 running backs. So Julio, good play, probably not cash. DeAndre Hopkins, always good. Keenan Allen, this guy's been a stud, man. Look at these stats. I mean, these targets, double-digit targets every single week, putting up huge numbers. Don't know what the pass volume is going to be in this Miami game. They're probably going to get a big lead pretty early in the game, so we'll see. But the chances of him scoring a touchdown are likely, so he's got a high floor again. It's just kind of deciding between kind of someone like him and Eckler. And typically, when I am all things being equal, I'll go running back over a wide receiver. But great play, Odell. Baltimore's secondary is pretty banged up. They have Marlon Humphrey, who's a solid player. Based on what I've kind of read, he might shadow. So just something to keep an eye on. He's been kind of disappointing. There's some interesting stuff going on with the head coach. I think Beckham's a stud, but probably not a spot that I'm playing. Maybe some tournaments, but Mike Evans against the Rams, not a great spot. Marcus Peters and Aqib Talib have been playing pretty well so far. Tough matchup, not a cash game play. Watkins is interesting. Darius Slay's banged up. I'm not sure as of right now if he's going to play or not, but Sammy Watkins, he put up a huge game in week 1, and since then he's been kind of quiet. Getting a lot of targets, though. I don't know. Maybe I have some bias against Sammy Watkins, but he's a good play. But there's a guy on Kansas City I like a little bit more. He's a little bit cheaper in a dome, which I'll get to. But Sammy Watkins is definitely a tournament GPP player if you're interested. Thielen at Chicago. I'm actually going to the Bears Vikings game tomorrow. So Thielen's a stud. Bears cornerbacks do give up some yards. So I don't know. This is kind of a low-scoring game. I'm not sure it's one I'm really interested in other than defenses. Julian Edelman, we'll see. I think he had a chest issue. We'll see what happens with him. Buffalo, tough defense in Buffalo, but they're vulnerable in the slot. I want to say Tyler Boyd had like 6 catches for 67 yards. Not really an upside play. Kind of priced in a range with where I like some other guys more. Probably not a cash game play for me. This is the guy that I'm interested in. Cooper Kupp. He's been a stud, and it's just amazing how he tore his ACL late in the year last year, and he's come back and been so effective so far. A guy I kind of avoided in best ball and some of my season-long leagues, but he's putting up huge numbers. And against Tampa Bay, who once again, like I said, pass funnel, they give up passing yards. Cooper Kupp, great play, and I think I'm leaning towards him in cash right now as well. So Obviously, we're at 4,100, so we're probably going to have to start looking at some lower end guys. So all these guys, great plays. Hollywood Brown, great tournament play, but I'm just for time's sake, I'm going to kind of come down here. Fitz, solid play. Who else was I looking for? Christian Kirk, he's on here somewhere too. Here he is. He solid play, good cash game viable. Mecole Hardman was the Chiefs guy I was referring to. Not getting a ton of targets, but just huge play. And in a dome where Pat Mahomes is going to be slinging it, and some of these smaller, faster guys on turf, I think there's. I think Mecole could have a big game. He's going to be a lower owned guy. Not sure I would go there in cash games, but for tournaments, I love him, and I'm going to make a Pat Mahomes tournament lineup, and I think I'm going to stack Mecole Hardman with him. But once again, probably not a cash game play. So coming down the list a little bit more, this 4,500 range is kind of interesting to me. So Will Fuller, not typically a guy I play in cash games, just because he's kind of, in the past at least, he was kind of a boom or bust guy. But looking at his numbers this year, he's getting some consistent looks. He's running a lot of routes, solid target. Lower A dot or lower A dot, which is average depth of target, than typical. And you can see his average isn't as high as he's kind of accustomed to. But I think he's a solid play, and I'm actually considering for cash games this week. Dante Jackson, who's a corner for Carolina's out, so I think Will Fuller is in play, and he's a guy I might be playing in cash. We'll see. It kind of comes down to the news of this guy, Terry McLaurin, F1. I've heard him called Scary Terry. I'm not sure which one you like more. Let me know which one you like more. It seems to be kind of a hot button question. But he's putting up big numbers, and Case Keenum's throwing him the ball. The issue is he's questionable. He showed up on the injury report late in the week, tweaked his hamstring at practice. This is going to be interesting, and this is going to be one of the bigger decisions I have to make. Even if he's active, I'm a little scared. There's some reports that it was just precautionary, but we haven't gotten enough confirmation yet on really what's going on with him. So it's part of me is hoping that he just sits out so that I can play Paul Richardson, who I'll get to, who's actually cheaper. But I don't know. This is gonna be tough. If he plays, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I think it's just something that we're gonna have to work through and see, and kind of lean on some of the reports. I'm not sure on this one though, guys. I think for now we'll plug him in, but this is subject to change. And like I said, one of the guys I'm considering pivoting to is Will Fuller. The other one is Curtis Samuel. He's going up against Houston, who obviously here you look 29. They don't have a good pass defense. I think their top corner is Jonathan Joseph, who is old as shit, and not really sure why they have not put more capital into their secondary, because it's been bad for a while, and they shipped away Jadeveon Clowney too, so the pass rush isn't as good, although they still have a few guys on their defense. But last week under Kyle Allen, 7 targets. I think Curtis Samuel's a good play, and a guy that I may pivot to, depending on the McLaurin news. For now, like I said, we'll plug in McLaurin. And I think another guy for now that I will plug in is Will Fuller. We'll kind of see how the lineup shakes out, and then we can make some decisions. So tight end. Let's just put it this way. Travis Kelce, stud tight end. Not playing him in cash. He's too expensive, but awesome play. Evan Ingram, if I had a little bit more salary, he'd probably be my cash game tight end. Guy's a stud, man. He'd make it, even with Eli Manning, he was putting up numbers. And then last week with Danny Dimes, he played well. And He ran a drag route and took it to the house, and he's just a stud. So definitely a cash game consideration, but for this build, not sure we're gonna be able to afford him. Darren Waller, this guy's just putting up numbers, and he hasn't even scored a touchdown yet. So guys, when you're looking at some of these guys, touchdowns are going to be a little bit harder, are going to be harder to predict. So when a guy's putting up these kind of numbers and he hasn't even scored a touchdown yet, he's obviously in play. But Indy's zone defense kind of they kind of funnel passes to tight ends in the middle. So they play a cover 2 scheme, which is a little bit more vulnerable. I know Darius Leonard was injured. I'm not sure if he's back yet, but he's in play. Mark Andrews always in play. Delaney Walker against Atlanta. Yeah, I mean, never get excited. Austin Hooper, he's been getting a bigger target share. He's definitely in play. But probably not a guy I'm looking at for cash. But as for a GPP lineup, or even in cash, you could play him if you really wanted to. Greg Olsen had a big week, getting pretty consistent target share. Houston's awful against tight ends. Got no problem with him. Hunter Henry out. Ebron. Ebron might play a little bit more since T.Y. Hilton's looking doubtful. So here's the guy that is going to be chalk at tight end. Will Dissly. Now, I'm not even sure how good Will Dissly is. I can't say I've watched much of Will Dissly, but he's scoring touchdowns and he's getting a decent target share. The Seahawks traded away Nick Vannett away this week to the Steelers, so Will Dissly is probably going to play a decent amount of snaps. How many routes is he going to run? Who knows? But I think he's going to be the cash game tight end I choose for now, and it's just because Al Seidenfeld kind of has his patented flow chart. Are the Arizona Cardinals playing? Does the team they're playing employ a tight end? Yes to both. Just plug in Will Dissly. So I'm gonna plug in him. I think for salary purposes, it's probably the right decision. So now we're going to the flex. This one is interesting to me. I think okay. So I guess I didn't go through the running backs all the way through. Just looking through David Johnson GPP play. Marlon Mack, home favorite against Oakland, solid player. Doesn't catch passes, but Leonard Fournette, he's the only running back that Jacksonville's got, and he's getting touches. We've seen this for a couple of years now. He's just not very efficient, but his floor is probably that 12 to 15 points, and for 6,000 salary, I mean, if he scores a touchdown, he'll exceed 3x, which is kind of what we're looking for. So, solid player. Chris Carson, fumble issues. I'm not going there right now. LaShawn McCoy. Kerryon Johnson's interesting. You know, he's underpriced. They traded away C.J. Anderson. Last week he got touches. Granted, he didn't do much with them. This one is interesting to me. I have some fear that if KC gets up, that Kerryon Johnson's going to be taken out for Ty Johnson. So the Kansas City Chiefs rush defense is pretty bad, but this one's, I don't know. I don't know if he's a trap or not. If he gets 20 touches in this game, he's going to smash his value. Smash it. If he gets 10 to 12 because the Chiefs built up a big lead, I don't know. Then I think he's not going to pay off, and that's a little bit what worries me. I'll talk about him and another lower price guy, but he's not really getting much pass work. Maybe that'll change, who knows, but for now, maybe Kerryon Johnson. He is definitely cash game viable, but no, there is some risk with him. Come down the list a little bit more. Wayne Gallman. So here's the other guy. So here's the other cash game guy that you got to look at. Saquon Barkley out now. We're going to have to make a decision. I think it's going to be Wayne Gallman. So just kind of taking a look here. Last week he didn't do much, but like I said, Tampa Bay's been really good against the run and not very good against the pass thus far. So Wayne Gallman, he's out of Clemson, I believe. This is his second or third year. I want to say. Don't quote me on that, but he's 4,600. So when we're looking at some of these lower price guys, honestly, we want 3x out of him. So it'd be like roughly 15 points. And he catches passes, and he's in a game environment where Giants defense is awful. So the Redskins should be able to move the ball a little bit. So I'm anticipating, maybe 15 touches for Wayne Gallman, maybe 10, 11 rushes, and 4 to 5 targets. And, for 4,600, if he gets 15 points, if he scores a touchdown, obviously he's in. But I think he's got a good enough floor, and I think we can justify here playing him. So I'm going to go ahead and plug Wayne Gallman in for now. So that leaves us 3,400 for our defense. And typically, guys, you want to, I guess for this one, it doesn't really matter as much because we're not playing many guys in the late slate. But typically, you want to have the more expensive people in the flex. And also, you want to have late game people just so that you can switch guys out if needed. So now coming down the list, we're at 3,400. I guess we can go over defenses. Unless defenses are scoring touchdowns like the Patriots were a couple weeks ago against the Dolphins, the range of outcomes, it's hard for a defense to pay off. So paying up for defense typically not something I do in cash games. But Chargers defense, they're playing Miami. Tournament teams definitely play them in correlation with Eckler. Typically when we're looking at running backs, we want guys who are home favorites and they're favored in Vegas on the Vegas line by the more the merrier, honestly. Chargers are big favorite. They're not at home, but Austin Eckler, Chargers defense, Miami going to be running a lot of plays, or at least throwing the ball a lot. So I think trying to play catch up. So I think that the Chargers are definitely in play. Probably more of a tournament for me. Patriots at Buffalo, they've been a stud. Like I said before, I'm pretty sure they haven't let up any touchdowns. I mean, yeah, not much to really say other than they're really good. Jaguars at Denver, not something I'm into. They got some talented guys. We'll see if Ramsey plays, but not really defense. There's a few other defenses I like more. Giants, 3,600, not really sure why. Definitely not somewhere I'm going. 3,600 for Giants defense seems pretty ridiculous. Rams. So obviously I can't fit them in this lineup, but I like this play. I think in my tournament teams, I'm playing Rams defense on a decent amount. Jameis Winston, very turnover prone, playing a high-end defense, probably going to be trailing. The Rams, they may not have given up a touchdown yet either. Actually, don't quote me on that. Or I was reading the stat on it. Maybe it was to wide receivers, but regardless, good defense. Aaron Donald's a beast. Jameis Winston's turnover prone. They're going to be playing from behind most likely. I really like the Rams defense, and if you can get to them, I definitely recommend. So we have 3,400 remaining, and I just want to preface this statement by saying I'm a biased Bears fan. Born and raised Bears fan, going to the game tomorrow, so probably playing Bears defense. They have some injuries, but I just can't get the replays in my head last year watching the Bears play Kirk Cousins. And let's just put it this way, it wasn't pretty for Kirk Cousins. Bears defense harassed him, and we all know the Bears defense is really good, and I'm just going to plug the Bears in. I mean, we're at zero salary. It seems almost too good to be true. Honestly, this lineup really has come together pretty well, I think. The only issue, like I mentioned before, is going to come with Terry McLaurin. Not really sure what I'm going to do here. If he ends up being out, going to have to make an interesting decision because then we're at 4,500. To me, the natural pivot. So this is probably, as of now, this is the lineup I would probably use if we get confirmation that Terry McLaurin was just precautionary and he's good to go. if for some reason he's going to play, but he's going to be limited or he's going to be out, let's just kind of play through this. I'd probably go down to Paul Richardson, who I don't think I touched on, but solid play. Um, Getting a decent amount of targets. At least last week he did. I anticipate they're probably going to be trailing again, especially if Terry McLaurin's limited or out. Paul Richardson, I think, is a good play, and so probably someone I would go to in cash, to be honest. So then this is where it gets interesting. So we have 800 in salary left. So let's look at some of our possible pivots. Russell Wilson, I'm pretty locked in on. Wayne Gallman, 800 naturally would bring us up to Kerryon Johnson. It's an interesting pivot. It's definitely an option. Cooper Kupp, let's look at 800 more. I'm not sure that would get as much. Odell, I would just stay at Kupp. Richardson, I'd leave. Will Fuller would be another potential pivot, so we could go up to 5,300. Look at some of these guys. John Brown, not for cash. Stephon Gilmore, shadowing. Demarcus Robinson, no. Landry, no. Hardeman, not really cash. I mentioned Kirk earlier. He's interesting. As you can see, he's pretty solid, and I anticipate Arizona throwing the ball a lot. They play at a fast pace, and that up-tempo air raid Cliff Kingsbury offense. Not really sure how good they are as a team, but they put up good fantasy numbers. So Christian Kirk is interesting. You could pivot up to him from Will Fuller if you wanted to. And then, so a potential pivot could be something like this, where you go up to Kirk. Then we have 200 left, and we could actually pivot up to the Rams. So that could be an option if Terry McLaurin's out. But for now, let's go back to what we were at. Fuller. And then, let's see, Bears. Another idea is Will Dissly, 3,200. We could see what's up at 4,400 and under. Austin Hooper, Greg Olsen you could go up to. So if you don't want to ride the Will Dissly train, which I'm going to play him in cash, but I'm not sure I'm playing him in tournaments. So that's for now probably what I would do. This is a decision to make. So either you go from Wayne. So if Terry, I know I've said it, but if Terry McLaurin's out or limited, you can either pivot up from Wayne Gallman to Kerryon Johnson, or you could go up to Christian Kirk. You could leave the Bears defense in if you really think they're going to be good, or you could pivot up to the Rams, who I think are probably my favorite play for defense. Or you could go to tight end and go up to like Greg Olsen or something. For now, what I'd probably do, man, I'm conflicted. So that would be a decision to make. For now, I'm not sure which way I'd lean. I'd have to think about it, but those would be the two options. So I think that about sums it up for me. I hope that this was somewhat interesting to you, and I hope that I gave some good information. I know this is my first video, so I'm sure it wasn't clean, so apologize for some of the ums, or if I was kind of scattered on some things. I'll if I get some likes and if I get some people to get some viewers, and I'll definitely try and work on some of my content and information. And I don't mind doing a weekly show, maybe on like Saturday mornings like this. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. I really appreciate it. Hit the like button and subscribe if you're interested. Thank you, guys, and leave some comments. What some things that probably I could do better, or some things you liked. If you have any specific questions on some players, I'll try my best to answer them. I'm a casual DFS player. Like I said, I play about $1,000 a week. You kind of have to have realistic expectations when you play. So I want to say my ROI typically is 10 to 20%, depending on if you hit GPPs. It's hard to win GPPs, guys. So honestly, it's 10 to 20% if you don't hit big. And if you do happen to hit a big GPP throughout the year, that's what escalates it up to the 40-50%. But there's a lot of great content out there now. So just keep that in mind, guys, and just be realistic and do your research, and you'll be rewarded. So thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate it. Like I said, hit the like button, subscribe if you're interested, and feel free to leave comments if you have any recommendations for me or things like that I can do to make the show better. Thanks, guys, and good luck.